Hey, g'day guys, it's Adam from VideoShowMeHow, and in today's video it is part 2 of our water tank installs. So if you haven't checked out part 1 just yet, head on back to the channel and do that part first. This will make a whole bunch more sense if you do that bit first. Cool, so done that. Okay, excellent, great. So in this video, we're going to be covering the rest of the install. The second tank is in, it is all 100% complete and working. So I'm going to step through all of that, the setup, the install, all that sort of jazz, and what it all looks like underneath. We'll give it a test, but then also have been getting a ton of comments, DMs, messages from all you guys, asking a bunch of questions around the setup, around the controversial input for the whole system. Geez, that stirred up some controversy. So we'll cover all of that and I'll step-by-step it in a bunch of different categories. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first part we might cover is underneath. So before we cover what's going on here and how it all works and then cover some questions, let's get underneath and suss out what's going on. Right, so here we are. Now hopefully you can see and hear me a-okay. We've changed cameras just for a bit more wide angle action. And this is what's going on. So we still have tank number 1 living up here. This is the 30-litre tank. And then over here, this is the new guy that we got custom made. This is the 40-litre tank. So if I scooch over here a little bit better, and it'll probably give you a little bit of a better view, we can see as far as this tank goes, like you saw in part 1, me having a crack at plastic welding these in just did not go well. So I left it to the professionals and asked them to get these little inputs in exactly where we wanted them. So we have over here, we have our output here on the far left. We have a drain hose here, which I'm not going to turn on because I'm sitting right underneath it. And then up the top here that you can't see, about there and there, are our input and our breather for this particular tank. We then have our connector here, which joins into our 30-litre. You can see at the top here, this guy here is the filler that comes in. We'll have a look at that in a second. And then this is the breather for this tank. So now I did get a bunch of questions around what's going on with this. This is the spare tire replacement. So from a company called Built. I'll link all this in the video description. The reason why you need to replace this if you do go something like this, a 40 as well, is because the factory tire release mechanism comes in from there and you've got to push this sort of stick through to a mechanism here which sits in the way. So I've gone to a different style here. It does mean he-manning the tire up against here, and then it basically jams it up against all of this here. So it keeps everything, 1, keeps the tanks nice and protected, but then 2, sort of keeps it all nice and tucked up there like it would be from factory. So that's the go there. Now as far as different connectors and what have you, these are all Bunnings specials. We've got food grade hose for all this stuff. That's what these tanks are as well. We've just got a million different hose clamps and that sort of jazz, keeping everything all nice and tight. If I had have done this again, I probably would have used PEX hose, which are just the push-in clamps. They're just a million times easier. So there you go. Hopefully that covers everything there. From here, let's get back up the top, get the thing plugged in. I'll show you how it fills because there's a 2 breather thing going on so we get maximum capacity. So here we are above ground again. I've just got the old drain going there because it was full, so I'm letting a bit of water out, otherwise filling it up isn't going to work very well. Now how this would work, we have our tap here because like we saw in video 1, the water tank sits directly under there. We have our overall tap here. Behind the headlight, behind the tail light, there is a whole bunch of room there. That's where ultimately our valve is going to go. So this is the reader, the sensor that goes with the Chopper G readout here. So we'll cover that in a sec, but ultimately that will live behind there. To use this, like we saw in video 1, dead simple. Get in the old store mod here. We pull out our hose. That, by the way, store mod number 2, thanks very much to everyone who's registered their interest in purchasing this. Head to VideoShowMeHow.com if you're looking at that. Great news, we have finally, after a whole bunch of work, we've got large scale production happening on these, which I'm super excited about. It's been a ton of work, but it is close. So we're looking at the end of July. These guys should come online. There may be some parts of it that's sort of into August, but check out the website if you are interested in anything like that. Register your interest. I'm going to shoot out an email to everyone who has registered to let you know they're ready to go. But for this, it's just a click into there. We get our curly hose. We turn on our pump. Turn on our hose. We turn on our pump. You can hear that kick into gear, and then there's our water. So you saw that in part 1. Now, as far as filling the thing up, I better actually just get under there and turn that off. Filling the thing is dead easy, and it's also pretty controversial because I put a couple of posts up showing this off and people freaked out. People were going, there is massive risk, you're gonna fill up your diesel tank with water, all of that stuff. I can't wrap my head around that, quite honestly. Apart from the fact, the thought to me by putting a hose down into there, just the mind boggles. I'm quite comfortable that's never gonna happen, but you know, if you feel like that's a risk, don't recommend that for you, then that's okay. We are behind a locked cabinet here, and this is kind of my theory behind putting it in here. We've got a bunch of dead space. It's not needed. It locks and seals. So that's my sort of theory behind putting it here, other than what I can also do. I've got a 3D print one of these coming with H2O written on it, and also a little ring, so it'll stick to there. But for the moment, I just stick it up there. And then we've got an actual outlet that, conveniently, for the old garden hose, or the rainwater tank in this instance, and just plug it in. That's it. It starts filling. Now, as far as the breathers go, we do have one that's hidden up underneath here. That's for the top tank. This other one, I've got an extra breather here. So to get maximum, which we're still full here. So normally what you do when the tanks are empty is you open this valve up. That is the breather then for the big tank at the back. That will not have anything, it'll just be air coming out of there. Once that starts doing that, like we just saw, that means that back tank, the lower tank, is full. I can hear that nice and easily. You might be setting up for a trip, that sort of stuff. Once that guy is doing that, we know that back tank is full. So we just need to, there's no more air coming out of that. We just close that guy off, and then it will start overflowing into our top tank, the 30 litre. And then in a minute, you'll see this guy overflow. And once that happens, we know that 30 litre is full as well. And we have the whole lot all nice and full. I did do a capacity test yesterday on this, and I was using 11 litre buckets, and I got 6 buckets done. So I'm thinking capacity wise, so we can start to hear it gurgling. Here we go. So that's the beauty of this, is you don't have to hold the hose in there like caravans or camper trailer that I had in the past. You just click it in there. So that's the advantage of this. You get full pressure, no leakage going on there. You can walk away and let the thing do its thing. And then once it's nice and full, it just overflows like that. And then you just unclip it, punch the cap on there. It settles down, pressure stabilizes, and you're nice and full. So like I was saying there before, I did do a capacity test, and I had 11 litre buckets and got 6 buckets done. 6 and a little bit, so I'm thinking capacity is probably around that 65 litre mark of the 70, which I'm pretty stoked with that. So that's the fill port. That's how that all works. When we're done, we close it up and you wouldn't even know it was there, so pretty happy with that. Now let's get on to the way we can tell how much water is in the tanks. So to work out how much water is going in or out of the tanks when you're using it, and you're going, okay, well, I've had a shower maybe, something like that, or you know, whatever, you're on a couple of days and you wonder how much you got left. The Victron unit here does have a tank inputs through the servo. I was looking at using that, but they've got some problems in the fact that it kind of relies on a float system in the tanks itself. And with the tanks being a little irregular and my plastic welding skills being horrific, I didn't want to punch any holes in the tank. So what I've gone with is something I've used in the past, which is this Topogy unit. How that works is it uses a sensor, which I know I've got to actually install this part yet. It's going to live behind the tail light here, just in there, which will link up from the pump to the actual tap itself. I'm just waiting on a little connector to arrive for me to be able to wire that in. Everything else is wired in through StoreMod. I just literally got to connect it. So that'll go in there in a minute. But how this works is this middle guy is a sensor, and it's got a little impeller in here. So what happens is when water's coming up through this, it measures how much water's going past it and then counts down on here. So the idea is you program this with how much water's in the tank. So for me, once I do a proper test, I'll work out exactly how much I can get out of the tank. Let's call it 65 litres. You'd program that in to be 65. So then basically when you fully fill up the tanks and they're chock-a-block, you set this so it knows it's 65, and then it reads as you start using water out of the tank. It'll read how much you're using and then count down. So it sort of gives you a readout of exactly how much you've got left in both tanks. Now for me, you could actually just run the 30 litre tank, and that would require, you wouldn't need to touch your spare. That could all work like normal. The input for your spare winder to let the spare down and that kind of stuff, that would all stay exactly the same. You wouldn't need to upgrade to any of this sort of jazz, and you know, the winder and the He-Man effort to put the tyre back up. That would all stay the same. Onboard water is definitely pretty cool. Like, I mean, if you think about that, just hitting a button here and having full 10 litres a minute, plenty of pressure coming out, that's awesome. Compared to jerry cans mucking around with that, it's definitely pretty cool to have. Not necessary, but I mean, nothing in here is really necessary. So having pressurized water is definitely a bit of a game changer. It's pretty cool to have, whether it's doing a bit of a wash up at camp, whether it's filling up the all important kettle for the coffee in the mornings, that sort of stuff. Having pressurized is awesome, and having it on board removes the need to carry it in the tub. And particularly when you're doing bigger trips, this was something that I was cooking up while I was doing the Cape trip, and certainly while I sort of came back and was thinking about the Cape trip. But removing stuff from here was definitely a win. Not having to take separate jerry cans and that kind of stuff is definitely a winner. And that's kind of the theory there too. You're getting all your weight down as low as possible. It's underneath the tub, so it's down nice and low, which is excellent for crazy angles and stuff when you're forward driving. But then it's also freeing up capacity. So to give you an idea, 70 litres, of course, if we do the maths, you were looking at 3 and a bit jerry cans that would be taking up sort of, you know, that much room that you wouldn't even know is there. That's hidden underneath. That's not impacting anything else. We've got same clearance. We've got weight down low, and you've got that extra storage. So that about covers it. Let me know what you reckon. What do you reckon? Be helpful if I turn that on. Well, what do you reckon? What do you reckon of the setup? 70 litres, what do you think? Is that too much? Am I completely out of sorts here and overboard like everything else on this truck? Or what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. Would you do something similar? Have you done something similar? What's your setup? Interested to hear. Let me know in the comments down below. But that's all for this one. We do have another couple of videos on the way. We've got some interior stuff going on. Maybe to do up here perhaps. So you'll see that coming soon. If you haven't already, check out these bad boys over on the Video Show Me How YouTube channel. Bit of cup holder action so you can sit your coffee in there without spilling it. We've got trays, we've got the whole box and dice, so check those out on the website. We're looking forward to those couple of videos coming to your YouTube soon. But other than that, guys, as always, I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.